Hello, guys. I'm your host, Jawan the Don, and this is the Wrestling Matters Podcast, Episode 3. Today we'll be discussing Aljimain Sterling versus Roman Bravo Young results, the January 9th Burroughs versus Taylor matches announced, Gomez medically retiring, and Chimaev pulling out of the UFC event. Alright, guys, with no further avail, let's get right into it this week. We're going to go Aljo versus RBY results, and this was a whole event hosted by the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club over at Penn State, and they got a lot of their guys on their roster and a lot of their guys in red shirt out there to compete in matches. And then we also get the awesome participation from a UFC star, Aljimain Sterling, and former two-time Division III All-American Aljimain Sterling, who is now the number one contender at bantamweight in the UFC. He's able to come over and help grow the sport of wrestling and compete, so that's awesome. And we'll get right into it. The number one contender in the UFC bantamweight division, Aljimain Sterling, held his own in a wrestling match with Penn State's Roman Bravo Young. RBY won 6-4. Sterling landed an over-under lat throw for 4 points and had the lead at the break. Really impressed by Aljimain Sterling on this throw. RBY doesn't get thrown very often. In fact, he's been on the finals for multiple age-level freestyle world teams. He's an All-American here in Division I. So for Sterling to get that big 4-point throw, that was awesome for the sport, and he's a true number one contender in the UFC. This guy's good. Sterling landed the throw. He goes into the break up 4-2. Of course, boom. Bravo Young came back with a takedown and 2 push-out points in the second period to eventually get the win. Afterwards, they competed in a 3-minute submission match with some jiu-jitsu submission grappling. Sterling rolled to his back and was kind of pulling guard. You saw RBY jump like a cat over side to side. RBY is jumping. Keeping his ankles free, staying nice and quick like a cat, wasting time looking for his angle. All right, then Sterling goes change the game plan. He gets up, gets in his stance, and he shoots on a low single. Aljimain Sterling is in here on a low single with his head down on the mat. His head's down. He's in on a low single. He's here in the side-to-side position. And usually I was thinking a shin wizard from RBY in a stalemate, but Aljo goes, and he's on the single leg, and then he reaches across and throws his other leg in. Yeah, so he throws the boot in on the opposite side. So he has the near leg laced up to the hip, and then he throws in his left leg. And now, once you get that leg in, you're on the opposite side, and now, the body is like a table. You have control of each side of the hips now. You have a banana split / like spladle ride position. And he didn't do anything too extra with it. He just settled in on top, adjusted, let go of his single, got his other boot in. He got both boots in, and he finished with a rare naked choke. Okay, RBY is no slouch. He fought off the choke well. And eventually, once Aljo was able to get him turned off his belly, he was able to finish the choke and end up tapping RBY. And it was fun. It was fun to see a submission match in the middle of a wrestling day. So that was awesome. RBY fought the choke decently. I know RBY has trained with TJ Dillashaw some in the past and other MMA fighters. So maybe he'll be a prospect to look out for in MMA. RBY is awesome. That'd be awesome to see him in the UFC or Bellator one day. Zain beat world medalist and recent 25K winner Bajrang Punia of India 6-0 for the biggest win of his freestyle career. Yeah, Zain Rutherford is a 3-time NCAA D1 champ, world team members, been to the World Championships for USA. Big win for him to beat this world medalist of Punia. And as I said just there, Bajrang Punia recently won the $25,000 for 150 pounds. So Zain looks to be the favorite going into the Olympic trials for the 65-kilogram spot in the United States. Punia may have pushed himself and bit off a little bit more than he can chew, after winning the 8-man bracket for $25,000 and then getting on a flight from Texas to Pennsylvania to wrestle Zain on a short turnaround from competition and short notice in general. You know, Bajrang Punia had wins over Pat Lugo, Anthony Ashnault, and James Green, you know, which I don't know if he game planned for them for, but it was a 8-man bracket. He won $25,000. And then for him to turn around on a short notice next day, he gets a call. Zain Rutherford needs a match in Pennsylvania. He takes the flight. He goes to wrestle Zain. I would like for him to have a week to get his head right before he wrestles someone at the level of Zain Rutherford. You know, he's still fresh off competition. He's a day after prepping for James Green, and we're going to get on a flight and wrestle Zain Rutherford. It's a tough day. It's a tough day. There's nothing sweet about it. So, but of course, and I have to say this, there's no excuses in this sport, and Bajrang Punia will be back. He's a guy that's a serious threat to win the Olympics coming up here next year, and you know, he dropped some matches Zain, but it doesn't mean much to him. He'll be back. They'll wrestle again. And but go USA, you know. Zain Rutherford gets the win over Bajrang Punia after Punia was in Texas beating up everybody, all the Americans, and winning $25K. You know, Zain Rutherford says, "Hold on, you know, before you go home, let me get a piece of you." So that's good for Zain Rutherford and the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. Also, another match we slightly previewed on this card was Nick Lee versus Tariq Wilson. This ended up being a 14-10 victory for Nick Lee. It was an exciting match as expected, but Wilson was able to avoid the tech fall and work his way back into the match. I know Nick Lee was up by 8 at one point, and you know, I had it on my mind that Nick Lee might tech fall him, and I know Flow Wrestling predicted it to be that way. And props to Tariq Wilson. He's a fighter. He's a scrapper. He's not done wrestling, guys. You know, and he's good. Tariq Wilson's good. He had some nice high-level attacks, and he really showed a lot of composure. Not too many people give up 14 points to Nick Lee and still manage to get at least 10 of their own. Nick Lee's a stud. Hopefully he wrestles this year for Penn State, and then he'll be a threat to win it, if not ranked in the top 3 at 141. So be looking out for Nick Lee and Tariq Wilson, two young guys doing awesome wrestling and putting it on the line during that event. We also got wins from Joe Lee and Carter Starachi. Look for those guys to fill in and be ready to score major points right out the gate for Penn State. You know, they're right back in the team race. All right, guys, in further news, Austin Gomez medically retires from wrestling. This is unfortunate, but best of luck to him. He is 22 years old and was a 3-time Illinois state champ and a solid starter for Iowa State University. He also made the 2018 Freestyle Junior World Team, but he never was able to compete at Junior Worlds, and he also didn't compete last year at NCAAs. He's had a lot of injuries due to concussions and knee injuries. He's going to hang it up, and he's going to focus on coaching and being a partner and mentor to the youth that are wrestling. So for now, he's going to stick around the Iowa State program. But, you know, you got to feel for Austin Gomez. He's been a stud around my age. He's a little bit younger, but I remember him wrestling since I was young. You know, he's a great out of Illinois. And this is very unfortunate, but, you know, we have to be aware of injuries in our sport. You know, concussions are nothing to joke around, and knee injuries have to be recovered from properly. You know, but prayers out to Austin Gomez, wishing him a speedy recovery. And he's not going anywhere. He'll be involved in the sport, so we'll still see Austin Gomez around. On a lighter note, you know, it's not as important, but Iowa State was number 3 in the team rankings for NCAA D1. So you lose a Gomez, and you know they might drop. They might drop down to 7 or 8. You know, and that's tough for Iowa State because the top 3 teams get a team trophy. So, you know, but there's bigger things than trophies, you know. This guy wants to be around to take care of his family. So, shout out to Austin Gomez, and we'll have to update the rankings and see where that leaves the team rankings at with Gomez out for the year. All right, and next we have the Flow Wrestling card, January 9th, Jordan Burroughs versus David Taylor. We have world champ versus world champ in the main event and the co-main event. That's insane and it's unheard of, especially with them all four still being in their prime. Matchless. 86 kilograms, Jordan Burroughs versus David Taylor. 76 kilograms, Adeline Gray versus Tamira Mensah Stock. 97 kilograms, Jaden Cox versus Hayden Zilmer. 152 pounds, James Green versus Pat Lugo. 65 kilograms, Nashawn Garrett versus Joey McKenna. 51 kilograms, Emily Shilson versus Aaron Golston. And 76 kilograms, Evan Wick versus Tyler Berger. All right, I'm going to speak on the co-main event here just for a little bit. Adeline Gray versus Tamira Mensah Stock. So for those of you that don't follow women's wrestling, you may not know who she is. Adeline Gray is one of the greats. And by that, I'm not gonna call her the GOAT. I'm not gonna get into that. You guys can do your own research. But if you don't know her, do your research. She's only 29 years old and is the only American 5-time world champion wrestler in freestyle history. So once again, she's 29 years old and she's a 5-time world champion in freestyle wrestling. She also has her own signature shoe, which is through ASICS, and you can get a pair of the Adeline Gray shoes if you want. You know, she's a star. It's unfortunate most people don't know her, but who else is a 5-time world champion in an individual sport in their 20s? Nobody. It's unheard of. Tamira Stock is solid and is the current world champion and hasn't been tested in some time. It's a big match for women's wrestling. Tamira Mensah Stock, very humble, great attitude. She dominated at the World Championships last year. No one really came close to her, so this is a match that was on my mind. When I was watching her at the Worlds last year, I was kind of wondering, I wonder how she would do against Gray. So this is fun, and we'll finally get a chance to actually see who's the best women's wrestler in America, who's the best upperweight women wrestler in America or in the world. So this is awesome, 2 world champs going at it, and this will be fun to see where they pan out for the Olympics next year. Also, we have David Taylor, 2-time NCAA champ, 2018 freestyle world champion, takes on Jordan Burroughs, the Olympic gold medalist and 4-time world champ. They both have signature shoe deals, Taylor with Adidas and Jordan Burroughs with ASICS. I own a pair of each of their shoes. Those guys are awesome. I'm literally the biggest fan of Jordan Burroughs and David Taylor. This is the match of the century. The size advantage in both these matches are going to go to David Taylor and Adeline Gray. Tamira Mensah Stock wrestles at a weight class below Gray, and Jordan Burroughs wrestles a weight class below Taylor. In the third match of the night, well, actually not the third match, but third to last, before the co-main, we also get to see the return of 2-time world champion and Olympic bronze medalist Jaden Cox, who's recently moved to the Ohio RTC and is making the move up to 97 kilograms. We're excited to see Jaden Cox. He didn't wrestle at the RTC Cup, I think for COVID-related reasons, but he's moving up from 86 kilograms, where he kept David Taylor off the team, and now you move up to 97. And for those of you guys that don't know, the last Olympic champion at 97 kilograms is from the United States. So eventually Jaden Cox is going to have to wrestle Kyle Snyder if he wants to make the team. So at the Olympic trials, we're going to have world champions and Olympians wrestling each other for a spot. Good problems to have, America. Wrestling's booming here. All right, what do we have next? Division I wrestling is starting up this week. Be on the lookout for matches on ESPN Plus, Flow Wrestling, the Big Ten Network. Follow us on Instagram at the Wrestling Matters Podcast. We'll be giving out updates and links and letting you guys know where you can find matches. The Big Ten has not released their schedule for wrestling this year, but all the other conferences have. Any moment now, I'm sure by the next episode, the Big Ten schedules will be out. So you guys just keep a lookout for them. Be ready for Division I wrestling to start. It's going to be a quick turnaround with the NCAA's being in March, but we're going to have a shortened, quick season and then right around, boom. So we're going to have a short conference seasons, boom, NCAA's, boom, Olympic trials. So although there's not a lot going on in wrestling right now this week, The next 6 months are going to be very jam packed. So, with Lord willing, with COVID and everything, let's just be ready to watch some good wrestling. All right, the next UFC event that is scheduled is for January 16th at 145 pounds, which is the featherweight division. Max Holloway takes on Calvin Kattar. Max Holloway is a former UFC champion who's had the belt for a while now. He recently lost his belt to Alexander Volkanovski, and he had a rematch against Volkanovski and lost that. So now it's all right. We can't go against Volkanovski a third time. Let's mix it up. He's going against Calvin Kattar. I think Calvin Kattar is dangerous, and he has a big upset potential here. Now Max Holloway's solid now. He had a big fight win streak, and he's one of the greatest champs at featherweight ever. But this is going to be an exciting bout. January 16th is when you'll get your next UFC fix, and be ready to watch that, guys. Also in news, Russian-born wrestler Khamzat Chimaev, who is a 3-time national champ in Sweden after immigrating there as a young adult, has pulled out from his fight against Leon Edwards January 20th on UFC Fight Night. Apparently his lungs are still recovering from COVID, and it wouldn't make sense for him to take a UFC fight right now while he still has some fluid in his lungs he's dealing with. We will talk more about Chimaev on this podcast in the future, as he looks to be one of the biggest hype trains of a wrestler going into MMA ever. He's had a couple of short knockouts, and I believe he's 3-0 in the UFC, and he's only fought for 6 minutes. Just submissions, knockouts. No one's really hit him. He's hitting people. He grew up wrestling in Russia when he was 5, moved to Sweden. Khamzat Chimaev's the truth. I did a little research on him, and he's a serious guy. He's going to be around. He's going to be a problem in the UFC. We got to get healthy, though, guys. It's important. It's good that the UFC is still competing through COVID, but not if everyone's getting sick and pulling out of their fights and then damaging their lungs, because I don't really know about the recovery from it, you know? But Chimaev I'm sure he'll be scheduled to fight again soon in 2021, and this is a guy that's going to fight for the belt into 2021. So be looking out for Khamzat Chimaev. Leon Edwards expressed to the company that he'd still like to fight on January 20th. So if there's anyone that's going to step in at 170 pounds and fight him, I mean, I don't know who wants to fight the number 3 ranked guy on that short notice, but hey, I mean, that's a shortcut to getting you ranked in the top 5 of the UFC. So hopefully someone takes that fight. And that's what they plan for the UFC. They plan on having a fight on the 16th, the 20th, and the 23rd. So they're going to give you like a week. It's Dana White's little Christmas to the UFC fans. So January 16th is Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar. The 20th is Leon Edwards. It was supposed to be Leon Edwards versus Chimaev. Chimaev's pulled out from that fight. And on the 23rd is Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier. Okay, the only few fan questions I've had have been people concerning, is Poirier going to look to grapple? Is he going to shoot? Is he going to try to take down McGregor? I don't think so. I think that he should, but I don't really respect Poirier as a wrestler. I watched him fight earlier this year. Dan Hooker shot on him. He defended it with overhooks and brought the man on him and took himself down. It's not very high level wrestling. No offense. He's concussed. He's tired. He's been fighting for 20 minutes. You know, people make mistakes, but I don't see him as a very offensive wrestler in the octagon. Also of note, Conor McGregor bought his son a singlet, and he bought himself a singlet, and he's been practicing in singlets. So maybe McGregor whips out some wrestling. You know, he has the Ireland logo on his wrestling singlet, and he's mixing it up in the training. But also say this, I thought McGregor defended the wrestling of Khabib better than Poirier did. But I also believe that Khabib wanted McGregor to suffer, and I think he wanted him to fight some things off to make him tired. So this is a tough one. This is a good loaded week of fights in January. I like Holloway versus Kattar. I want to see who Chimaev will fight next, since this fight didn't happen. And, of course, McGregor versus Poirier, too, goes down on the 23rd. We'll be back later on this week to preview Jordan Burroughs versus Taylor. And we'll get more into the D1 schedule. And then we're going to drop an episode ranking the wrestlers in MMA and ranking the wrestlers in the UFC, as long as well with the prospects that we'll go over. But yeah, with no further ado, I'm your host, Juwan the Don, and this is episode 3 of the Wrestling Matters podcast. Thank you. Make sure you subscribe and follow, guys.